Welcome back to A Bite from the Money Sandwich, where we provide practical and easy to understand tips and ideas on how to manage your money better, so as to let you retire with comfort and on your own terms. Ever wondered if your health insurance is really giving you the best bang for your buck as you get older? Today, I am joined by Kate Browne, Head of Research and Insights at Compare Club. Now, Compare Club helps Australians find savings in their insurance and loans. Kate will dive into the complexities of health insurance for older Australians, especially as premiums rise and needs change. Kate explores why it's so crucial to review your policy every 3 years or so to ensure you're getting the best coverage for your money. We also discuss the benefits of services like Compare Club that help optimise your policy without added costs. Tune in for practical tips on managing your health insurance, understanding coverage tiers, and making sure you're not paying for extras you don't need. Well, welcome to the show, Kate.
Thanks so much for having me, Mark.
Well, we'll get straight into it. Health insurance for a lot of people is one of those things that we just have. It's one of those things we're doing our working life, but as we get older and we know everything, especially when it comes to insurance, premiums go up and we get to a point where we think, oh, well, we're going to retire soon. Do we really need to have health insurance? And yet, for a lot of people, that's when they most need it. So probably that's a good point to start for yourself is, should we actually still keep our health insurance once we're older?
I think if you've had private health insurance in the past, it's definitely worthwhile keeping it as you get older. You know, the rubber really hits the road as you get older. That's when we know people start having more chronic health problems, big health problems. And often, the ethos is that if you get health insurance when you're younger, that's really, in a way, helping to finance the older members who are probably more likely to need it. So I would suggest for anyone who's a bit older and questioning whether they need it, really think about that. Look at things like public hospital waiting times at the moment and think about what perhaps you've seen family or friends go through who are maybe a little older than you before you decide to exit. It can be a false economy.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And really, it's like anything though, you want to get value for money. So there must be strategies. If you're getting older, there's a lot of things extras that you may have had when you needed when you were younger, you may not need when you're older. So what are some of the strategies if you're an older Australian to basically get value, save money on their health insurance?
The first thing I'll say up front is health insurance is diabolically complicated.
Yes, that's what I found.
I'm not going to say things like research. No, you can. You're very welcome to. What I would say is, and what we see here at Compare Club, is very few people give their health insurance an overhaul when they should. And the absolute minimum should be every 3 years, if not a little sooner. And I was guilty of this myself. When I started in this job, I spoke to one of our agents and he said, "Oh, how long have you had your old fund?" And I was like, I think like 4 or 5 years. When he went in, it had actually been 9 years. And I just hadn't realized. I think it's a bit like dental visits. You know, that year comes around so much faster than you swear you've just been at the dentist. It's time to go again. Health insurance years can fly by. And certainly in my experience, what I realized is I was missing out on a whole lot of benefits. And my life also looked profoundly different to the way it did 10 years ago. So for me, that would be the first rule of thumb is definitely make sure that you're making sure that you're covered for the right things, that you're jettisoning, there's a tricky word, to the things you don't need, but also that you're looking at the market and seeing what's available. What I've seen in my research here is that quite frequently people are paying too much in their premiums, but the really critical one I've seen is people often aren't getting the best value for their policy. So where we might be able to save you $10 a month on your premium, you could potentially double the value of your extras, for example, just by shopping around.
Wow. Okay. And let's just break health insurance down a bit. There's sort of the gold standard, or the gold level that, private, you get your own doctor, those sort of things to your basics. So do you want to just explain that a bit? Because for a lot of people, they're not sure about that as well.
Yeah, so we have Medicare. Medicare's for everybody. So
Mhm.
Medicare is always our backup. It is, what every Australian's entitled to, whether it's bulk billing or if you turn up to emergency at a public hospital, you'll be looked after. Private health insurance is designed to provide backup to that system, but also give Australians who can afford it a bit more of a choice. So with private health insurance, we have a few years ago, the government brought in some different categories. So we have gold cover, silver cover, bronze cover, and basic. As is the way of the market, then we ended up with bronze plus, silver plus, a whole lot of
Yes,
little kind of like
yes.
extra categories. And within those, there's a profound difference in what you're covered for and also what you'll pay. And certainly, again, what I've discovered in my work since I've been here at Compare Club is some of those covers are very poor value and some can be excellent. And again, it's quite tricky and detailed to figure out which one is best for you.
And I suppose because of my superannuation retirement background, being an ex-advisor, and we were, looking at life insurance, lots and lots of extras, TPD, there was other benefits, and or if you're looking at income protection, salary continuance, and there may have been 20 or 30 little extras. I suppose a lot of it is what's your lifestyle. What are the sort of things? There's no use sort of having 30 different extras if really your niche is over on the left side there rather than on the right where there's all these other benefits, and you're just paying for something you're just basically not going to use. So is there a sort of, how do you get help in sort of working out, well, what of those benefits for silver compared to gold you need?
Yeah, it's a good question, but I would also say, like, we don't have a crystal ball in life. There is things at
Sure,
us that we
true,
never
true.
expect. But as a really good rule of thumb is looking at who's on your policy. So one thing that's interesting is the age of dependence has just been raised to 31. So if you have a child
Oh,
that's under 31, who's not married or doesn't have their own child, they can still go on your family policy now, which I think is really interesting, just showing how our lives have changed, cost of living has affected the way families are. For older Australians, for example, gold cover sounds great, doesn't it? It sounds
mm,
like top notch, top tier, very expensive. What's interesting though, between a silver plus cover and a gold cover is only a couple of things: IVF, weight loss surgery, and mental health cover. So for starters, if you're perhaps almost at retirement age or you're retiring, you're probably not going to need IVF.
yes, good
You
call.
may
Yeah.
want to have a look about, look at weight loss surgery. Is that really something that is on your radar? Certainly, mental health care is a huge issue. There needs to be more mental health care in all of the sectors of private health insurance, but currently that's where it's sitting. So sadly, once again, if that's not on your radar, then we find a lot of older Australians would be far better off on a silver plus policy rather than a gold, because you're paying for things that you're probably not going to need. But as I said, the devil's in the detail. Top line, people are busy. They're like, oh, gold cover, that'll cover me. But often you're paying for things you're not going to use.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of, I think you're going on a good point there, that people think, well, no, I want that gold. I want that gold
Mm,
plan because that's probably the best. There's probably a reason why it's a gold plan compared to silver in not just health insurance, but in a lot of different areas. And so I don't really want to do it because I think I'll miss out on something. So you could
mm.
say, just on that example, if you're in silver plus, for example, you still get the private uh, uh, hospital, you still get it for surgery, a lot of the still, yeah, but just those three things, which is really quite amazing that it can be that.
Mm.
And obviously that makes a saving in price.
It does, and it is. You with the Silver Plus, for example, you're covered for a huge range of health issues. You're still going to have access to private hospital cover. Your extras will still be optimized, but it's really those three key things that I mentioned that are additional. So it can be confusing to navigate this space on
Okay.
your own without knowing all of this. Equally, we've done a big analysis of basic policies, which provide very poor coverage. Really, all they're going to do is offset your tax. And we found examples where a basic policy that really only covered you for ride an ambulance, which, depending on which state you
Sure.
live in, is free, and some very minimal hospital cover. We found bronze policies that covered you for like up to 24 different ailments that were cheaper than the basic policies. So this isn't an area where everything's clean cut and makes sense. It's a diabolically complicated area, and it's very, very easy to end up paying for something that's either not good value or just simply paying too much.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about, you're making it very, very clear how complex an area this is, and people just may be paying for something they don't really need, and life gets in the way, so we struggle to do this research ourselves. And I'll ask you about your service, and how it can help people. But just one of the things is, I know that, as you said, about the government, and it brought in about the gold, silver, bronze, and the basic, but even between insurers, I find a lot of people, when I've spoken to them, they say, well, they're all the same. And they're just not, are they? There's just definitely a difference
No.
between providers.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I'd say is, and in certainly my circumstance, when I mentioned before, I was on I'd been on the same policy for 9 years. That policy had been grandfathered, and there were better
Right.
policies being provided by the same health insurer, which kind of blew my mind. And so even within an insurer, someone might be getting far better value than you because they're a new customer. So I would say that they're all different. They all provide different value, and it is genuinely surprising, not only looking at each fund, but looking at from policy to policy, the
Yeah.
differences. And that is why we have 31 health insurers in Australia. Some are very large, have a lot of market share, some are very, very small. But within those insurers, there are just multitudes of policies as well. So that's another thing people fall foul of.
Okay. And so therefore, really, for an old Australian especially,
Mm.
who's worrying about now, well, this is becoming quite an expensive cost every month for that. Really getting some good help, they can actually compare, and actually most likely probably could downgrade and still get good quality benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw a lot of people drop private health insurance a few years ago, mainly due to the cost of living crisis. Completely
Yeah.
understandable. What we've seen now is we're at a sort of baseline where people are keeping it, but they're not comparing and switching as often as perhaps they should. So I would say to anyone who's looking at their bills and thinking, "Gosh, this is really expensive," absolute first port of call if you haven't had a good look at it or had it run through by an expert in the last 3 years, that would be your first port of call rather than jettisoning it. There are so many policies. There are old policies that are still kicking on. There's new policies. There's still a lot of competition in the market for customers as well. So,
Mm.
the funds did quite well during COVID because obviously they didn't have people using their services as much, but they are competing for a slightly smaller pool of customers now because a lot of people have dropped it completely. And so the other thing I would say is by switching, sometimes you might get 8 weeks for free. So that's 2 months of premiums that you're not going to be paying. I mean, for me, that would be $800 right there that I've saved on my
Mm.
family policy. You may get a gift card, you may get other benefits. So switching can also just put you on the front foot in terms of just getting that bug and being a new customer. So I would definitely recommend, before even considering dropping it, running through, seeing what you've got, seeing what you could do better, and having it completely optimized. Another thing I'll mention is what's really interesting is a lot of extras cover is based on a dollar figure. And
Uh-huh.
so what might have been a good deal 6 years ago has not kept up with inflation. So you're
Right.
actually losing value. So some funds now offer their extras at a percentage value, but a lot still offer it as a dollar figure. So my fund, it's like, oh, you've got $500 towards this, you've got $400 towards that. In the case of me, I was on a policy for 9 years, so you can imagine how much that had degraded
Yes.
without me really understanding. So there's just another example of like, if you set and forget, you're automatically starting to fall behind. So it's really critical to give it a really good going over and decide what you want to do then before just cutting it out, which I think a lot of people did in haste, and that can be fine if everyone's fitting well, and you can have a lot of regrets about that if something goes wrong.
Yeah, no, I've always maintained everyone should have a good safety net. Life insurance, health
Mm,
insurance, general
mm,
insurance. You just need to provide, even having a will, you need to have a good safe net which underpins any good plan or life strategy. But as you said, cost of living, inflation going rampant,
Mm,
mortgages doubling in price. First thing that will go is your insurances. It's absolutely there, but it really is a really critical point. And I'm glad you made it that uh, reducing it rather than getting rid of it altogether is absolutely the better way of doing. And then just, maybe, okay, review it again in 6 months' time. Can I afford that, or can I bring it back up to the premium I had before? But just
mm,
jettisoning it totally is just not the right thing to do. And if you can
yeah.
sort of just have an in between, a happy medium, that's a far better option. And for someone who's older and absolutely needed for a heart operation, having a point where I sort of say, oh, I don't need health insurance anymore. You don't know what's around the corner. And you just, unfortunately, the stats are the older you get, the more likely you're going to need it. Um, so one of the things I wouldn't mind asking about uh, is exactly what your company does, because
Mm,
we've really quite shown that to actually do this, unless you're doing this doing this every day, the average person trying to do the research between different companies, it's just going to be going down this dark hole and just be so difficult. So it'd be really worthwhile, because I'm just really impressed with the work your company does. And you're a perfect example of the research you're putting in behind this, and just in health insurance. So I'd like you just to give a bit of information about that.
yeah, for sure. So Compare Club is we don't really use the phrase comparison site because we're not a site where you can hop on and do a comparison, but we do compare and help people save money. So we have agents that work in each of the areas that we specialize in. So we have health insurance experts, life insurance brokers, mortgage brokers, and we have an energy team as well. So they look at gas and electricity, because my goodness, that's another area where prices are going through the roof.
Mm,
And if there's
absolutely.
anything more complex than health insurance, which I didn't think possible, it's energy. Energy is diabolically complex. So we have experts in each area. They only work in that area, and you can call us or you can put in a query on our site, and you'll get a call back from one of our experts. We don't do all of market. Not many places do. There are websites where you can see the whole market. But I remember my CEO, when I joined this company, said people just want to get this stuff done. And sometimes, good enough is good enough. It's better than not doing it at all. And certainly, as someone that's been working here now for over a year, I've used this service for my energy, for my health insurance, and even when I bought a home last year. The mental load of having someone else be able to go through that and actually do all the paperwork for you. So certainly for energy and health, mortgage, sadly, still got a bit of paperwork to do there, but that is a big service. But with my energy and health, I've overhauled my energy, for example, twice in a year. Both times, they've very quickly been able to identify that I've been paying too much, because these things keep chopping and changing. They will tell me, this is a better deal. Would you like to do it? Yes, it's all done for you. So in the case of my health insurance, it was all done for me. I think I handed in my credit card details to set up a direct debit. That was it. The fund was switched, and I was able to basically kind of enjoy the savings and the extra benefit I was getting through my extras. The same with energy, and I think we have to be realistic, as you said, Mark, about people having the time and the bandwidth to do this stuff. I'm living and breathing in this space all the time, and I'm still finding out things about energy and health insurance
Mm,
occasionally where I'm like, I didn't know that. So to expect someone that's not in that world to understand is not realistic. It's not an optimal system by any stretch. And so this is a way of being able to get someone very quickly and easily to run through that. The other thing I'm really proud of at Compare Club is, if we can't get you a better deal, we'll tell you that. So
good.
we won't be pushing you into moving. In terms of the money, it's set up like most other comparison sites. We have deals with those partners that we work with. Our sales agents aren't privy to that. And that is how, so it's at no cost to the customer. And obviously, you don't have to change. But what they're able to do, because they are experts, is able to very quickly identify where you might be able to make some savings. With my health insurance, they saved me on my premium. I didn't lose any benefits, and they doubled my extras. I've got teenage children who've got very expensive teeth. So for me, extras was really important, and I got a lot more value For my energy, they were able to switch me to a different supplier, and I got a $200 credit because, again, there's a lot of competition in the market. Would I have sat down and done these things myself? I know how to do it, but after a long day in the office or doing whatever I'm doing, it's not what I'm going to do. I have to be realistic. Some people do, but a lot of us just want to get it done, and then we don't. It always ends up on the end of our to-do list as well. Oh, I'll try and do that next week.
Yeah, and it's always gets put to the bottom of the stuff that we're going to get around to do, and when we get a bit more time, we're going to get around to it. And
Mm,
it's what I talk about. I talk about people that you should be using experts who know this stuff and will
yeah,
give you back time. That's the most important thing. If you
yeah,
There was a great story about Richard Branson, who was just saying to some young 22-year-old, the chap would just say, "Oh, could you give me $1,000?" And he said, "I'd give you all my money to be 22 again." It's just because he says,
yeah,
"I can't get back time. I can do anything.
yeah,
I can afford anything. I just can't afford time." So he pays a lot of people a lot of money just so that he can use his time most effectively. And it's just we just need to learn that. So it's not about because I think that's also a really good point you
mm,
made is that people think I'm smart enough. I should be able to do that. So
mm,
it's not saying you're not clever enough if you had the
mm,
time to actually do this research, but do you have the time? Or have you got better
yeah,
things to do with your time and you'd rather spend that with family and friends and so on. So I think it's a really good service. And I think even to sort of add to that, which I really like about your service, it's not just a comparison site or as you said, there are other compare sites. Your people who will help you will actually do it for you.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
because there
right.
is paperwork
Yeah.
normally involved in switching it, but it's switching a health fund. There's not usually a penalty and there's not usually an entry cost. It's actually, if you switch, you can actually get benefits of switching.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Mark. And the other thing I think, I'm I'm certainly not young, but I still don't like making and taking phone calls. And when I first arrived, I
Yes.
was like, oh, why can't we do this online? And I
Right.
quickly learned when I went through my health insurance, oh, like it would just be so difficult. And I kind of, I kind of had those words handed back to me when I did finally commit to the 20-minute phone call, and I was like, I don't have to do anything. And I think sometimes we can overcomplicate things. Someone I know is a consumer psychologist. He was looking at the self-service culture, everything from the grocery store to doing stuff online, and how much longer it can take
Mm.
when you are doing things online, and or you're doing things yourself. And for me, again, I was like, okay, that was a big a cultural change to how I like to operate. I'm like, oh, I don't want to talk to anyone. I'll just do this. But that's where you get the benefit of that expert. And while you can do it online, you can set up your own little spreadsheets, and some people love doing that. A lot of us just want. I always say, like, a lot of our services are one and done, and that makes a huge difference. The other thing I'd just say about switching health insurance providers too, just because we've done some research into this, Mark, and so many people still think you have to reserve waiting periods. And that is just not the case. That changed in 2007. Unless you're adding something new, you don't have to reserve those waiting periods. So that's just, again, a really common misconception people have, because your listeners might be going, oh, yeah, but I don't want to have to wait 12 months. You don't, unless you're adding something new. And even then, often they'll waive that or they'll reduce it to 4 months. So just a really good point for people if they are worrying about that.
And I think people, I don't know, I think it's sort of I talk to a lot of people when they talk about mortgages, for example, and they say, "Oh, but I've been with my particular bank for years, so I'm loyal." And I said, "Well, then, unfortunately, they're not loyal to you. They
Mm.
what the deals
Yeah.
they're giving to attract new people to their bank, you're not actually receiving." And so it's something it's a real education to sort of feeling it's nearly a emotional decision that I've just been with that same bank for 10 years. It must make sense to me that I would be better off staying with them, but it really isn't in most situations. But again, it's the difficulty of having to move. And if that can be
Mm.
taken away from you, or that all that extra work to be taken away from you, someone else can do that for you and give you back time, and as well as getting a better deal. And I should really point out that anyone listening, if anyone who's listened to me over the last 3 years doing podcasts, I don't do advertorials. I really don't. It's when I was an advisor, one of the things I help my clients with time was they'd say, okay, you're not an accountant, but you must know a good accountant, or you must know a good mortgage broker because you've just been doing this, or I need a good estate planning lawyer. And over 30 years, I built up those connections to make it easier for my clients. And so I get emails every week on, can we come on your show to talk about whatever? And I do the research, and unless it really is something that's going to be of interest to people listening to this, and you just fall into that category. I just really appreciate the work you're doing. And, if I would want to do it, and I am actually for our energy, definitely going to contact yourselves, then anyone who's listening to that, I feel comfortable doing that too. So it's a really good service that you provide, and it's just well done that you're doing this. Just probably one thing, is there anything, because you get asked this all the time, I'm
Mm,
sure, but is there
yeah.
something I haven't asked you that you think that probably the listeners would do? Is there any other practical tips, or that if they do decide to do this on their own, that
Mm,
you would say, okay, I get between the gold, silver, and maybe between providers, but is there anything else that
mm.
you would recommend as a strategy?
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. For a start, it depends on where you live.
Oh,
If
okay.
you live in regional areas, you may not have access to private healthcare. So it may, that's something to consider, and maybe it's not right for you. In other areas, look at waiting periods. So, waiting periods in the public health system can be incredibly long. So, again, when you were talking about time, Mark, think about time or quality of life.
Mm,
And you've mentioned something like a heart operation, even smaller things. I'll share. I discovered I had a very, very unhappy gallbladder a few months ago, and I'd been feeling rotten for months.
yeah.
And people can have gallbladder attacks and end up in emergency. My GP told me, if you went public, because it's very unlikely to kill you, you could be waiting for 2 years before you have that
Uh-huh.
gallbladder removed. But you're going to feel tired, sick, nauseous, and you've got the risk of being rushed to hospital. I went the private route. I had to shell out about $2,000 up front, which I felt a bit dirty about. I'm not going to lie. But when I looked at the bill for my surgeon was actually $8,000. I had surgery one night in a private hospital and recovered really quickly. So on balance, yes, I had to still pay a gap fee. Gap fees suck.
Yep.
But on balance, I was like, terms of quality of life, did I really want to spend 18 months to 2 years feeling absolutely awful and wondering, oh my goodness, am I going to have an attack if I go somewhere remote? Am I going to be rushed to emergency screaming? Because apparently that's what can happen. And so that was just a really good illustration for me about why private health insurance can be important. It gives you a lot more agency. And as you get older and you have more health problems, you do want agency, you do want to be able to choose. And our public system, while it's wonderful, is so underfunded and so under the pump. And again, touching on where you live, what if you live in the big cities like Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane? Yes, there are more hospitals, but sometimes they are just run down to the bare bones because of the population and the cuts. So again, look at this holistically. Don't look at it as just something you can cut out of your budget. Average saving at the moment by switching health insurance is almost $400, and that's
Goodness.
average. So,
Okay.
if a 20-minute phone call means just doing that and perhaps getting you better value, again, touching on time, that's
Yeah.
a fairly low investment for a big gain. And
Yeah.
we see a lot of people worrying about buying a coffee or buying stuff at the supermarket, and you can make a phone call and save that money straight away. It's definitely worth doing.
No, that's excellent. No, and I love talking about well-being, and especially people are under a lot more financial stress than they used to. And anything like this, as you said, $400 is a significant amount of money, just from a 20-minute phone call that could, as well as from a health point of view, actually in the long run be far better off for you. Kate, that's been brilliant. Thank you very much. One of the things
Thanks for
I
having
always
me.
like to ask my guest is, from your own point of view, what may be the best piece of advice you've ever heard that you might like to share with the listeners?
I think I really like just get it done.
Mm,
I used to be a sort of all or nothing person. I'd be like, oh, I need to do this thing, but it's not perfect, and I'll do it later when I've got time. And what I've learned as I've got older is there's never a good time for lots of things, and done is better than perfect. And certainly when that also applies to kind of these services and these kind of little tweaks you can make to your finances and to your life, done is so much better than perfect. So just take the action, get it done. It's better than it sitting on a list waiting to be perfect and not getting action for a couple of years or never. Yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah, love it. No, that's really good. I think the amount of people who have, sleepless nights because they say, "Oh, I need to get this," and then they just leave it and just don't and procrastinate.
Yeah.
No, get it done. I love it. Kate, been great to have you on the show, and thank you so much for the information. I'm sure the people listening will really appreciate. I really appreciate it, and maybe hope we'll get you back on the show another time soon.
Love to. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to know more about Kate Browne and Compare Club, visit compareclub.com.au or feel free to email me on admin@themoneysandwich.com or visit our website, themoneysandwich.com, if you have any questions or would like to learn more. Want more practical, easy to understand tips and action lists to help with your money stuff? The latest version of my book, The Money Sandwich, is now available to order on Booktopia and Amazon, as well as available at all popular bookstores. Everyone deserves to retire comfortably and on their own terms. Make this the year you take action. As with every podcast, this information is not advice, as not personalised to your own situation. And past performance is never guaranteed for the future. What we are trying to do here is to provide tips, coaching and education to help improve your money knowledge, which we believe can only be a good thing. See you next time when we take another bite from the Money Sandwich.